Haruto was a man who had everything society deems as success: wealth, a thriving business, and the respect of his peers in the bustling city he called home. Yet, despite his accomplishments, he often felt a deep, gnawing dissatisfaction that left him restless. His days were filled with meetings, deadlines, and endless responsibilities that weighed heavily on him, draining his spirit. At night, Haruto would lie awake, his mind wandering to a life he didn't have, a life filled with creativity, freedom, and peace. He often found himself daydreaming about being an artist, imagining how different his life would be if he could spend his days painting serene landscapes or sculpting forms that expressed his deepest emotions. The thought of leaving the high-pressure world of business to immerse himself in the world of art seemed like the key to the happiness that eluded him. He believed that if he could just become an artist, he would finally feel fulfilled. But Haruto was also a man of reason, and he knew that before making such a drastic change, he needed guidance. He had heard of a wise monk who lived in a tranquil temple on the outskirts of the city, a man who was known for his profound wisdom and the serene calm that seemed to radiate from him. Haruto decided to visit this monk, hoping to find the answers he sought. The journey to the temple was a welcome escape from the city's chaos. As Haruto traveled, the noise and bustle faded, replaced by the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant songs of birds. When he arrived at the temple, he was greeted by the monk, who welcomed him with a warm smile. They sat together in the temple's peaceful garden, surrounded by the sounds of nature, the gentle breeze, the rustle of leaves, and the soft trickle of a nearby stream. The environment was a stark contrast to the world Haruto was used to, and he felt his tension begin to ease. "Master," Haruto began, his voice heavy with the weight of his thoughts, "I feel lost and unfulfilled in my work. I've achieved success, but it doesn't bring me happiness. I often think about leaving everything behind to become an artist. The idea of creating something beautiful with my hands, living a life free from the pressures of business, seems like the answer to my discontent. What should I do?" The monk listened quietly, his eyes closed in contemplation as Haruto spoke. When Haruto finished, the monk opened his eyes and smiled gently. "I understand your feelings, Haruto," he said. "But before you make any decisions, I have a request for you. I want you to meet an artist whom I know. Spend some time with him and see what his life is truly like." Haruto agreed, eager to explore the life he had been dreaming about. The next day, he traveled to a small village nestled in the hills, where the artist lived and worked. The village was quiet and serene, far removed from the city's hustle and bustle. The artist, an older man with paint-splattered clothes and a serene expression, welcomed Haruto into his modest home and studio. The house was small and simple, with canvases leaning against the walls and jars of brushes and paint scattered about. The air smelled of oil paint and turpentine, and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over everything. For the next few days, Haruto observed the artist at work. He watched as the artist carefully mixed colors, his hands steady and sure, and then applied them to the canvas with deliberate strokes. The artist would lose himself in his work, completely absorbed in the process of creation. Haruto was struck by the artist's focus and dedication, and he admired the beautiful landscapes and portraits that emerged from the artist's hands. But as the days passed, Haruto also began to notice the artist's struggles. He saw the uncertainty in the artist's eyes when he spoke of selling his paintings, the financial difficulties that often plagued him, and the long, solitary hours spent in the studio, striving for perfection that sometimes seemed just out of reach. The artist lived a life of passion, but it was also a life of challenges and hardships. One evening, as they shared a simple meal, Haruto finally asked, "You seem so content when you're painting, but I also see that your life has many challenges. How do you find fulfillment in this work, despite the hardships?" The artist smiled wistfully, his eyes reflecting a lifetime of experience. "Painting is my passion, and it brings me joy," he said, "but it is not without its struggles. There are days when I wonder if I made the right choice, especially when I worry about making ends meet. Sometimes, I wish I had pursued a different path, like becoming a musician. Music has the power to touch souls in ways that painting cannot. I often dream of being able to express myself through sound, to connect with people on a deeper emotional level." Haruto was surprised by the artist's response. The life he had idealized was not as perfect as he had imagined. The artist, who lived the life Haruto had been yearning for, still harbored dreams of another path. Intrigued by the artist's thoughts, Haruto decided to meet a musician, as the monk had asked him to fully explore his feelings before making any decisions. The artist. After returning to the city, Haruto visited a local jazz club where he met a talented saxophonist. The club was dimly lit, with the warm glow of candles and the low hum of conversation filling the air. The musician took the stage, and as he began to play, the room fell silent. His music was soulful and intense, each note resonating with the audience, captivating them with its emotion. After the performance, Haruto approached the musician and shared the artist's thoughts about longing to be a musician. The musician laughed softly, his eyes crinkling with amusement. "Music is indeed a beautiful form of expression, and I love what I do," the musician said. "But it's not easy. The late nights, the pressure to stay relevant, and the uncertainty of this career can be exhausting. There are moments when I wish I had pursued something more stable and respected, like writing. Writers have the power to influence minds and change the world with their words. I often think that if I were a writer, my life might be more meaningful and secure." Haruto listened intently, once again struck by the pattern he was beginning to see. But the musician's words also made him curious about the life of a writer. Determined to explore further, Haruto decided to seek out a writer to complete his journey of understanding. In his quest to meet a writer, Haruto arranged to visit a well-known novelist who lived in a quiet suburb of the city. The writer's home was filled with the scent of old books and the gentle hum of a typewriter. Shelves lined with novels, essays, and manuscripts filled the room, creating a cozy, intellectual atmosphere. The writer welcomed Haruto with a cup of tea, and they sat down to talk. The writer was an introspective man, with a thoughtful expression and a calm demeanor. Haruto noticed the stacks of papers on the writer's desk, evidence of the countless hours spent crafting stories and refining words. As they talked, Haruto shared his journey so far, the artist who wished to be a musician, and the musician who longed to be a writer. The writer listened carefully, then smiled softly. "Writing has always been my passion," the writer said. "I love the power of words to create worlds, to express emotions, and to influence thought. But it's not without its own struggles. Writing is a solitary pursuit, often filled with self-doubt and the fear of rejection. There are days when I struggle to find the right words, and nights when I wonder if my work will ever be read or appreciated. Sometimes, I think about how different my life might be if I had become a teacher instead. Teaching allows you to share knowledge and directly impact the lives of others, something that writing, in its isolation, often lacks. There's a certain immediacy and fulfillment in guiding others, something I sometimes miss." Haruto was deeply moved by the writer's words. Here was another person who, despite being deeply dedicated to their craft, still dreamed of another path, a path that seemed to offer what their current life lacked. Haruto was beginning to see a clear pattern. Each profession had its own unique challenges, and no path was free from doubt or longing for something different. When Haruto arrived back at the temple, he was greeted by the monk, who listened patiently as Haruto recounted his experiences. Haruto explained everything: the artist who dreamed of being a musician, the musician who longed to be a writer, and the writer who wished he had become a teacher. He then asked, "Master, I see now that each profession has its own struggles, but I'm still not sure how to find happiness. What should I do?" The monk looked at Haruto with a kind smile and said, "You've discovered a great truth, Haruto. No profession, no matter how appealing, is without its challenges. The grass always seems greener on the other side, but happiness doesn't come from changing your circumstances or your job. It comes from within, from finding contentment in what you do and who you are right now." The monk continued, "Instead of seeking happiness by becoming someone else, find ways to bring joy and fulfillment into your current life. Embrace your passions, whether it's painting, music, writing, or teaching, alongside your work. By doing